Okay, so there are two ways to look at it. First, you can look at it as how did it is a process. There was a merger or there was a takeover. We can all debate whether the process was smooth or not. Okay, whether it was maybe something ought to have been done. That's possible. But the two questions are clear. One is, did he resign? Okay, let's assume he didn't resign as a claim, because letters are now on the open that show that, except there's allegation of forgery, which will be a criminal case. But if there's no allegation of forgery, there's a clear letter where he resigned. And if that's the case, then he has no case. But as well, he didn't resign. So the question is, what next? What about it? So he's the vice chairman. He claims to be the chairman, that he didn't resign his vice position. And his claim is that he was the chairman. Okay, let's assume he's the chairman. So it's not a case of determining between him and David Mark who's the chairman. It doesn't destroy the credibility of the NWC itself, which is a product of a NEC that INEC supervised, which nobody has challenged the credibility or the validity of that NEC. So the question is, people claim to have resigned. Someone claimed I didn't follow them, which means the voluntary resignation is doesn't affect me. But the party decision-making process is NEC and convention. And NEC now says, when I resign or not, NEC says all the members are dissolved. So let's assume they resign. They say you guys are dissolved. You say, okay, you don't have to go back and say that NEC decision is faulty, because the NEC decision dissolving the party is an illegal, legal position, authoritative, because the constitution of party says the highest organized convention followed by NEC. So if you now say I don't resign, okay, you are still vice chairman, okay? Even if you are the chairman, it does not negate. So what ultimately, there's nothing in the decision of the Court of Appeal, from what I read as a lawyer, that warrants that INEC would take the action they took yesterday. And even if, see, the point is not about who ultimately becomes the chairman, is you have rendered this party, leaderless, created a shadow of doubt around this activity. And this happens at the time that a major shift happens in favor of the party. Kwankwaso, who is a very powerful political actor, joined a couple of days ago. Today was scheduled for the governor of Bauchi to join. And then the night before, you hit this bazooka to just create confusion. So the timing, INEC, this has been over 3-4 weeks. You are part of this process. This has been served on you. Why today? Why now? This matter because there's an aspect of public perception. And that's why I say the history of the past, where you were used by the ruling party, and always be used by ruling parties, whether PDP or APC, to undermine election, suggests that you now act with greater sensitivity and caution. So even if INEC feels that they needed to vacate that recognition, they probably waited a few days. They probably take. So the fact that you acted now, acted the manner you acted, and no order directs INEC to take any action in this matter. None. Unlike the one of Labour Party, where INEC was directed and they didn't even remove the name. So you would say that, like judges say, that justice ought to be done and sin to be done. So in this case, what's the public perception of your action? So let's assume that this Joash Abu is a very holy man. He has no phone call with Tinubu or with the chairman of the party, APC. This is all timing, perception. Are you not supposed to be a lot more thorough, sensitive, kind of deliberative and kind of cautious to say, look, what's the overall impact of these actions on the party? And again, I've been arguing that INEC as a regulator, forget lawyers writing letters, you need to talk to the parties and provide more information. So look, what we are doing, this is how we want to do it, this is what we expect to happen, this is how this will affect. The party's members have scheduled to have convention. What are you doing? You should be the one who go to the court to say, we need certainty. Courts, we need to make sure these guys are on the ballot. That's the job of INEC.
All right, someone argue that what INEC did in removing David Mark and Aregbesola from their portal, and if you like the NWC, is a judicial overreach, given the position of the Court of Appeal that they should maintain the status quo. What do you think?
Well, the purpose of status quo ante bellum would be status quo before, even because the NEC, I told you, was July 29. These issues arose September. So status quo would be keep this as they are, which is that the ESCO has resigned. Now, status quo, also the decision came after INEC had already recognized them. So that would be, don't do any further thing. In fact, the status quo will favor David Mark, because they are the people already in by the time the matter status quo was, what the court said. And what the court didn't give it. This is like, courts just say, you guys, why, shoot your sword. Why we don't do something nasty that will change the configuration of this case. So everybody stay back. The court did not ask INEC to take an action, positive action, to remove somebody who already was on the status quo. So they are right that INEC overreached, acted. INEC had no duty, no directives from the court to remove anybody. INEC did it. It would appear from presumption now, not evidence, that INEC was acting a script, and it's okay. A asks for, Mr. X asks for A, Y asks for B. Okay, I will not give Y, I will give B. I'll clear enough here. That was the logic of it looks like contrived. Somebody cooked it up. This guys played to their hand, asked for this guy to be restrained. INEC's okay. This will not say, INEC, remove everybody. It's just like the example we had with Solomon and the baby that died, and the woman who didn't have a real claim says, what, cut this baby. I say, let me cut it. So that's what INEC has done. So okay, since people will say we shouldn't allow Rafiu, Nafiu as people, and now people say we should remove you guys. Okay, no, not that Rafiu, we have removed you guys. No, I think it sounds like a script hatched by opposition, by the ruling party, to stop the momentum that for now is on the side of the opposition party.
What do you make of INEC saying that let the judicial process continues while they delete, whereas we've seen in time past when such processes are also ongoing in the court, but the NWC or those involved are also allowed without INEC deleting them from their portal? Why is this one a special case?
Because INEC wants to delete this for strategic purpose of the ruling party. That's that's only that makes sense to me. I mean, that, like you said, why should they bother? Okay, you guys are in court, to be in court until you get a positive order telling us what to do. In the meantime, status quo remain. And then we go and monitor the elections that they're doing. So if the court now finally says it's wrong, we vacate it. So INEC loses nothing. That's the point. There's nothing that requires INEC to act. Let's assume at the end of the day that Rafiu or Nafiu wins the election, wins the case, and the court says that the Mark leadership was fake or illegal, irregularly constituted, therefore their actions in staging convention is invalid. What does INEC lose? Do you get the point? Whatever. So it's gratuitous, like I said in my interview elsewhere. I said it's at best it's a gratuitous, at worst it's a malicious intervention.
At what point does INEC's neutrality becomes complicit? The way they are going now, this case can drag on, knowing our courts, and especially making reference to what former President Jonathan said, it is easy to wake a man who is sleeping as against the man who is pretending to be sleeping. So if INEC in this instance is working towards an answer, at what point does their neutrality become complicit? Because
my own view is that that's the grand plan of APC. APC campaign strategy is first to avoid competition. I mean, I'm not sure they are governing well. I think they are failing on that indicator. I'm not too sure that President Tinubu is strong enough to campaign rigorously, especially against maybe a youthful, energetic guy like P2B, assuming he becomes there. I mean, the last time P2B dragged him, like silly across the country, he couldn't even show up for some of the television shows. I would presume that it'd be worse. He's not ready to really go down, ground zero and start explaining the failure of the government. So their big strategy is to make sure there is no big competition. And that's why effort was made to get the governors in. And the idea was that it will create a sense of fait accompli. It weakens everybody. So, oh, why bother? The ruling party has 36 governors. So what are they fighting for? It has not worked. The momentum is still with the opposition. People are angry. People are, if you look at registration, if you look at social media, if you look at opposition is growing, not because they are organized, not because they have, what it takes. Just people basically feel the country is going the wrong way. If you ask people, if you do a lot of polling and say, do you think the country is going the right or wrong way? My guess would be like 80% of Nigerians, 80 would say the country is going the wrong way. If you ask them that, do you think that, your life is better or worse? They would say 80 to 90 would say worse off. If you ask people, do you feel more secured in this country now than before? 90 people say we feel insecure. If you ask them, do you think that the ruling government is doing well or bad? 80 to 90 will say they are not doing well. So all these indicators show what then. It's constant everywhere in the world. The problem is without that chance to express how they feel. The idea of voting is voter preference, but then sometimes that preference is bottled because of the structure of elections themselves. So the APC playbook starts with chapter 1, which is don't allow real competition. It comes many ways. Destabilize the parties so that they don't in fact, at a point, from legal rules, from the Electoral Act itself, it's called that many candidates will be caught off guard. Their candidates will be illegal. Think about all the rules now that they are bringing in. Tomorrow, don't be surprised, the National Assembly will pass another amendment. We saw the one proposed to say you can't join two parties. What does that mean? To put those parties. So everything is being done to satisfy chapter 1, which is don't allow competition. It might mean the restaurant ADC, which could be the next point. So if we can't remove the leadership, cut off the party. So people are stranded. Last minute, Kwankwaso, P2B, Abubakar, we just discover that they are just stranded. The team will compete with one Musa and one Onyema in ZLP, in PDP, in fait accompli. The chapter 2 of their rule book then is if there's still a competition, maybe a P2B emerges somewhere miraculously along the line, or Atiku Abubakar still emerges, what do? Then rig the election. And so that's why they worked very hard. They were very resistant to the press to create that safeguard of real-time, so that there is a possibility that fake results will be received. And like I said, I don't see the INEC chairman. I'm not going to put my defense line on the INEC and INEC chairman. No, they will fail. The profile does not tell me that. So that's why our work is to protect INEC, to press INEC, to make sure INEC doesn't get caught up in this chapter 1 and chapter 2 of the APC game plan. So is there a point where so-called neutrality becomes dangerous? Yes. I mean, when INEC dribbles or get dribbled into where it's now clear that maybe no candidate is emerging because either by rules, either by order from courts, and by the way, everything INEC is doing wrong, or anything INEC will do, or anything that happened to an election negatively, at the heart of it is the court that, in my view, seem to the other Nigeria as captured. The court will give INEC the slam. They give in basketball. They will give them the ball, set it up properly for them to slam. INEC will now slam it. They will give an order that INEC will now purportedly to implement. They will do. So you're going to see that, dual striker force of INEC at the court that will damage the election and help the APC rule book to come to pass. My concern is, look, the best thing we can have in Nigeria is a free and fair election that sustains or at least prevent the specter of coups that have been happening in West Africa. You know, we just sit with some sense of presumption that, maybe because we have oil money we can share, that we're not going to be overrun by chaos or collapse or violent conflict or even military coup that succeeds. I don't have that faith. I think that the system is so fragile. I think we're almost like overrun by militia. We are struggling with terrorists. We are struggling with insurgents locally, people who are angry with the country, like Nigerians, whether in the southwest, whether in the southeast, whether in the north. We are struggling with poor economic performance. We are struggling with an elite that is criminal in their greed. So if you put all this together with a very terrible election, I'm not sure we'll survive. So my prayer is that somehow INEC will wake up from sleep, or wake up from pretense of being asleep, and really pull itself to say, look, the first guarantor of fair and fair election in West Africa is that the electorate of the INEC will be against the ruling party. If INEC is in bed with the ruling party, which is a phenomenon that's common, you will never have fair and fair election.